Have you ever wondered why some truths about men remain locked away, hidden behind silence and pride? Or why is it that even in the most intimate relationships, men rarely speak about what truly moves them, what they secretly crave, what they long for in the depths of their heart? The truth is this: men often carry desires they will never confess, not because they don't feel them, but because the weight of judgment, the fear of being misunderstood, and the walls of pride are too strong to break. These silent desires are not about weakness. They are about humanity. They are about connection. They are about the invisible language of love that men desperately want to speak, but often cannot. And here lies the key. If you can understand this hidden language, if you can look beneath the surface and touch those places men never talk about, you don't just strengthen a relationship, you transform it. You unlock a dimension of intimacy that most people spend their lives searching for but never find. This is not about ordinary attraction. This is not about surface-level romance. This is about reaching the soul through the body and the mind. Because intimacy is not only physical. Intimacy is the merging of respect, admiration, and vulnerability. And men, though they may not say it, are starving for it. Now, here's a secret about human psychology. The mind remembers words longer than it remembers touch, and the heart holds on to feelings longer than it holds on to moments. That is why when you speak into the silence of a man's heart, when you reach for the hidden parts he guards, you create a memory that never fades. You give him not just pleasure, but meaning. And let me tell you this, meaning is the deepest erotic zone of all. Because when a man feels meaning, he feels alive. When he feels alive, he loves stronger. He stands taller. He gives more of himself. And he does it not because he has to, but because he wants to. But why don't men say these things openly? Why do they hide? The answer lies in psychology, in the invisible battles men fight. From childhood, men are taught to be strong, to control their emotions, to hide their weaknesses. Society trains them to speak less of their hearts and more of their achievements. So they grow up believing that sharing their deepest desires is dangerous, even shameful. They grow up believing silence is safer than honesty. And yet, silence is what slowly starves connection. That's why so many relationships feel incomplete, even when love is present. Because love without understanding is like fire without oxygen. It cannot last. And what men crave most is not simply affection. It is the courage of a partner who dares to see beyond the armor, beyond the unspoken, beyond the silence. Now here's where it becomes powerful. When you, as a partner, learn to recognize these hidden desires, you become more than just someone he loves. You become someone he trusts with his soul. And trust, that is the rarest form of intimacy. Trust is what makes a man stay, what makes him open up, what makes him give himself without hesitation. Think of it like this. Behind every guarded heart is a locked door. Most people knock, but very few have the patience to listen for the key. When you discover the key, you don't just open the door. You step into a world no one else has ever seen. And that, my friend, is where love grows into something unshakable. This journey we are about to take is not just about learning where men feel most alive. It is about understanding the silent truth behind their desires. It is about listening to what is not said. It is about honoring what they will never admit out loud. And once you do, you will see the difference, not just in intimacy, but in how a man carries himself, how he looks at you, how he values you. So let me make you a promise. If you stay with me until the end of this message, you will walk away with more than just knowledge of the 5 hidden zones men secretly crave. You will walk away with insight, a kind of wisdom that can change the way you love, the way you connect, the way you are remembered in the heart of a man. And here is the reward. By the end, you will hold the power to transform ordinary connection into extraordinary intimacy. You will no longer guess, no longer wonder, no longer feel uncertain. You will know. And when you know, you hold the kind of power that heals, that inspires, that lasts. Because here's the truth. Real love is not built in the open. It is built in the hidden places, in the unspoken truths, in the secret cravings men dare not reveal. And today you are about to discover them. So lean in, pay attention, and remember this. Sometimes the greatest treasures are not found in what people say, but in what they are too afraid to speak. They say silence speaks louder than words. But in relationships, silence can be a prison. Men often live inside this prison, where their deepest desires, their most tender cravings remain unspoken. They want to share, they want to express, but something stops them. That invisible barrier between the heart and the lips, this is what we call the hidden language of desire. This language is not written in words. It is carried in the way a man looks at you when he feels safe. It is carried in the subtle shifts of his body, the way his shoulders drop when he finally feels peace, the way his voice softens when he senses understanding. Most people miss these signs, or most people hear the words, but never listen to the silence. And that silence is where the truth lives. Psychology teaches us that human beings are not driven only by what they say they want, but by what they fear to admit. Men are no different. They crave recognition, affirmation, and connection, but society conditions them to wear masks, or to always appear strong, to always seem unaffected, to always carry the image of control. And behind that mask, desire hides. Here's the paradox. Men hunger for intimacy as deeply as anyone else. But the training of the world convinces them to bury that hunger. They are told vulnerability makes them weak. They are told longing makes them needy. So they build walls tall and unshakable, hoping those walls will protect them. But the truth, those walls don't protect. They isolate, and isolation slowly starves the soul. That is why the hidden language of desire is so powerful. It is the bridge over the wall. It is the quiet way love sneaks past the armor. When you learn to read this language, you begin to see what is invisible. You begin to feel what is unspoken. And suddenly, intimacy is no longer about asking the right questions. It is about listening with the heart. Let me remind you of something crucial. People rarely remember what you said to them, but they always remember how you made them feel. When a man feels understood without having to explain, when he feels accepted, without having to confess, he experiences a rare kind of freedom. That freedom is the seed of trust. And trust is what makes desire grow into devotion. Think of it this way. A man may never say he longs for reassurance, but his body will tell you when his shoulders relax under your touch. He may never admit he craves affirmation, but his eyes will light up when your words breathe belief into him. He may never confess his fear of failure, but you will hear it in the silence after a hard day when all he needs is presence, not advice. This is the hidden language of desire. It is subtle, it is quiet, but it is undeniable. And once you learn to hear it, you will never look at men the same way again. Here's what human psychology reveals. Unspoken needs often create the deepest pain in relationships. When a man feels unseen, he withdraws. When he feels unheard, he closes off. But when he feels understood, when even his unspoken desires are met with recognition, he blooms. He becomes more open, more generous, more alive. He gives not because he is asked, but because he is moved. And that is the reward of learning this hidden language. You no longer live in confusion. You no longer ask, why doesn't he say what he wants? Instead, you begin to notice the whispers in the silence, the messages in the smallest gestures. You begin to understand him not just as a man, but as a human being longing to be seen. This is the power of empathy in its highest form. It is not pity. It is not guessing. It is the courage to lean in and feel what another person feels, even when they cannot put it into words. And when you give this kind of empathy, you offer a gift greater than touch. You offer belonging. Belonging is not about being with someone. It is about being known by someone. Every man, no matter how strong, craves this. And when he finds it, he no longer hides. He no longer fears. No longer carries his burdens in silence. He begins to share, to trust, to open. And this is when love transforms into something unshakable. So remember this, desire does not always shout. Most of the time, it whispers. And those who pay attention to whispers will always hear more than those who wait for words. If you want to touch the heart of a man, you must first learn to hear what he does not say. Because in the silence, his deepest truth is waiting. The greatest erotic zone in a man is not found on his body. It is found in his mind. Long before touch awakens desire, thoughts shape emotions and emotions shape the heart. A man's mind is the battlefield where confidence and insecurity collide, where pride and doubt wrestle, where strength and fragility live side by side. And what many fail to see is that the mind, more than any part of him, craves affirmation, recognition, and respect. Human psychology shows us that men are deeply influenced by how they are perceived, especially by those closest to them. Respect is not just a desire, it is oxygen to the male mind. Without it, he feels starved. With it, he feels unstoppable. This is why words and attitudes directed toward him carry more weight than most realize. A man who feels respected thinks differently, moves differently, even loves differently. He sees himself as capable, valuable, and worthy, and when his mind is lifted, every other part of him follows. But here is the tragedy. Many men live with a constant inner voice that tells them they are not enough, not strong enough, not successful enough, not worthy enough. That voice is born from years of comparison, failure, and the pressure to always prove themselves. It whispers in the dark moments, reminding them of every shortcoming. And yet, when someone they love speaks into that same mind with words of encouragement, admiration, and belief, the negative voice loses its power. That is why the mind is the first and most powerful zone, because when the mind is touched, the heart opens. And when the heart opens, intimacy grows effortlessly. Think of it this way. A man may never tell you that he longs to be admired. He may never confess that he thrives on your belief in him. But watch what happens when you give it, when you speak into his fears with courage, when you affirm his efforts. Even when he fails, when you tell him you see greatness in him, even when he cannot see it himself, his entire being shifts. His energy changes. He carries himself differently. Why? Because the mind has been fed what it hungers for most, respect and recognition. Let's go deeper into psychology. Men are often motivated more by encouragement than by criticism. Criticism may push them for a moment, but encouragement fuels them for a lifetime. When you criticize, you awaken defensiveness, but when you affirm, you awaken confidence. And confidence is one of the most magnetic qualities a man can carry. The truth is simple. When a man feels like a king in his mind, he loves like one with his heart. But when he feels small, belittled, or invisible, his love weakens, his passion fades, and his spirit retreats. That is why those who truly know how to reach a man's mind hold a kind of influence that no one else can replace. Now, understand this clearly. Admiration does not mean flattery. Flattery is shallow, empty, and quickly forgotten. Real admiration is rooted in truth. It is saying, I see how hard you work. I see how much you try. I see the strength it takes to carry the weight you bear. Real admiration does not inflate the ego. It strengthens the soul. And when a man feels this, something profound happens. He begins to desire not just the touch of your hand, but the presence of your spirit. He craves the closeness of someone who makes him feel seen in a world that often ignores him. He longs for the voice that drowns out the noise of his doubts. That is the hidden power of the mind as an erotic zone. It is not about intellect alone, but about how thought and desire intertwine. Ask yourself this: what happens when a man believes, truly believes, that he is loved not only for what he does, but for who he is? He becomes fearless in love. He gives without holding back. He trusts without hesitation. Because the mind is no longer clouded with questions, it is clear, strong, and secure. This is the kind of connection that transforms ordinary relationships into extraordinary ones. Because while many chase after the body, very few take the time to touch the mind. And yet it is the mind that governs everything. Desire begins there. Confidence begins there. Love deepens there. So remember this truth. The most intimate words are not spoken in whispers of passion, but in declarations of belief. When you tell a man you believe in him, you are not just speaking to his ears, you are touching his deepest need. You are unlocking the first and most powerful zone. The body may respond to touch, but the mind responds to faith. And when you give a man that faith, when you nurture the space inside his thoughts where fear lives, you awaken a fire that no obstacle, no doubt, no challenge can extinguish. That is how powerful the mind truly is. If the mind is the battlefield where a man's worth is decided, then the voice is the sword that cuts through his doubts or strengthens his resolve. Words carry power far greater than most realize. They are not just sounds. They are forces that shape identity, fuel desire, and build confidence. For a man, the voice of the one he loves has the ability to either lift him higher than he thought possible or drag him deeper into silence. Psychology teaches us that the human brain reacts to words as if they are physical experiences. Compliments release chemicals that create joy and energy. Harsh words trigger pain receptors in the brain as if the body had been struck. This is why a man can still remember the sting of cruel words spoken years ago. And it is why he can also remember the encouragement that gave him strength when he was ready to quit. Words linger. They echo long after they are spoken. For a man, the voice of someone he trusts is not just sound. It is fuel. The way you speak to him, the tone you use, the words you choose, all reach deeper than you think. Men rarely admit it, but they crave gentle affirmations, whispers of encouragement, and tones that tell them they are more than enough. Because in a world that often shouts at them to be stronger, faster, richer, and better, the voice of love that says, "You are enough as you are," feels like oxygen. But here's the truth. Just as a loving voice can heal, a careless one can destroy. Men are often perceived as strong, but strength does not mean invulnerability. Behind that strength lies a heart that can be bruised by disrespect, sarcasm, or dismissal. Words that belittle him, mock him, or question his value do not just pass through his ears, they strike his spirit. Over time, they make him retreat. He becomes quieter, colder, less present. Not because he doesn't care, but because the voice he longed to hear as healing became another weapon of judgment. And that is why the voice is such a powerful zone. Because when used with intention, it awakens something within a man that no physical touch can replace. The tone of encouragement in a quiet moment, the softness of a whisper after a long day, the playful affirmation that makes him feel desired, these are the touches of the voice, and they matter more than most realize. Think about this. A man may not always remember the exact words you said, but he will never forget how your voice made him feel. Was it harsh, or was it kind? Was it cold, or was it warm? Did it build him, or did it break him? These questions are written in his memory, and the answers shape not only how he feels about himself, but also how he feels about the relationship. This truth runs deep in psychology. Men are highly motivated by positive reinforcement. When they are told they are capable, they rise. When they are told they are admired, they give more. When they are told they are loved, they love back with strength multiplied. The voice then becomes not just sound, but the rhythm of a relationship. It sets the tone for everything else. There is also another dimension to this. Desire itself is influenced by sound. The human ear is sensitive to tone, pitch, and rhythm. A gentle whisper in a moment of closeness can ignite emotions far more than a physical gesture. A word of admiration, spoken in sincerity, can make a man feel powerful, desired, and alive. His body may crave touch, but his spirit craves words that affirm his worth. Never underestimate the silence between words either. Sometimes it is not just what you say, but how you say it, the pauses. You leave, the softness you carry, that makes the difference. The voice is not only about communication, it is about energy. And when your voice carries belief, warmth, and respect, it creates a safe place where his desire can be fully expressed. Now imagine the reverse. Imagine the damage when the voice he loves carries only criticism, anger, or indifference. Over time, even the strongest man withdraws from that sound. He shuts down not out of pride, but out of survival. He learns to protect himself from the very voice that was meant to lift him. And this is where relationships lose their spark. Not because love has disappeared, but because the power of the voice was forgotten. So understand this clearly. The voice is an erotic zone because it touches the soul through sound. It is not just about the words, but the intention behind them. It is not just about what you say, but how you make him feel when you say it. And when a man feels deeply affirmed, when his fears are silenced by encouragement, when his doubts are drowned out by admiration, he becomes a different man. He becomes stronger, more open, more passionate, more devoted. The voice is proof that intimacy begins long before the body. It begins with words that heal, tones that soothe, and whispers that ignite. It begins with the courage to use your voice, not as a weapon, but as a gift. And when you do, you unlock one of the greatest secrets of desire, because nothing awakens a man more than the sound of being truly believed in. If words have the power to shape a man's spirit, then touch has the power to release what he holds inside. And no part of the body reveals this more than the back and the neck. These places carry more than muscles. They carry the weight of a man's world. They bear the silent burdens, the responsibilities he rarely speaks of, and the invisible battles he fights each day. When you reach this zone, you are not just touching his body, you are touching his stress, his pressure, his unspoken exhaustion. And in that moment, you hold the power to turn tension into trust. Psychology teaches us that the back and neck are deeply tied to vulnerability. These areas are naturally unprotected. To allow someone access to them is, in itself, an act of trust. Think of how an animal lowers its guard only when it feels completely safe. In the same way, when a man lets you into this space, he is showing a rare kind of surrender. He is saying without words, here is the place where I am most vulnerable. Here is where I need comfort more than strength. Touch here is not just physical, it is emotional. It tells him he is not alone in carrying his burdens. It reminds him he has a place where he can let go, where he doesn't need to be the strong one every second of the day. And for a man, this is one of the deepest desires he rarely admits, the desire to feel safe enough to rest. Think of the back as the canvas of his battles. Every ache, every knot, every moment of fatigue is stored there. When you lay your hand gently on his shoulders, when you soften the tension in his neck, you are not just easing muscles. You are healing the weight of his unspoken struggles. That is why men crave this touch even though they may never ask for it. Because in the stillness of that moment, he feels released, he feels cared for, he feels seen. Now, let's dive deeper into the psychology of touch. The human body responds to gentle, intentional contact by releasing oxytocin, the hormone of trust and bonding. This is why a hand on the neck, a massage across the back, or even a light touch on the shoulders has the power to change his emotional state instantly. It does not just relax him, it connects him to you. It tells his nervous system, you are safe here. And when a man feels safe, desire flows naturally. But it's more than chemistry. It's about symbolism. The back represents strength. It is the part of him that holds others up, that pushes forward, that bears responsibility. To have this strength acknowledged, comforted, and cared for is more than physical relief. It is emotional validation. It says, I see what you carry. I respect your effort. And here you don't have to carry it alone. That kind of recognition touches a man more deeply than words ever could. The neck, on the other hand, is one of the most sensitive areas of the body. It is where vulnerability and intimacy meet. A gentle touch here is more than affection. It is trust embodied. The neck is close to the pulse, close to the breath, close to life itself. To touch it with care is to remind him that he can let go, that he doesn't always have to guard himself. And for a man who spends his days in control, this release is a craving that runs deeper than he will ever admit. Now imagine this, a man spends his day carrying the weight of responsibilities, work, expectations, unspoken fears. By the time he comes home, his back is not just tired, his spirit is heavy. And then in a single moment, a gentle touch across his shoulders tells him everything. His heart has been waiting to hear. You don't have to carry it all. You are safe with me. That is not just touch. It is healing. It is intimacy at its most powerful. Understand this clearly. The back and neck are not about physical attraction alone. They're about trust, release, and belonging. When you give this, you are not only reaching his body, you are reaching the man beneath the armor. And once he feels this, his love deepens, his passion strengthens, and his bond with you grows unshakable. This is why the back and neck are zones men secretly crave but rarely ask for, because to admit this longing would mean confessing vulnerability. And vulnerability is something men are taught to hide. But when you give it freely, when you reach those places with care and respect, you show him what he cannot show himself. That strength is not lost in surrender. Strength is found in being safe enough to let go. So remember this truth. When you touch his back, you are not just easing muscles. You are lifting burdens. When you touch his neck, you are not just sparking desire. You are giving him permission to rest. And in that rest, love grows deeper, stronger, and more alive than ever before. If the back and neck represent the burdens a man carries, then the chest and heart represent the very core of who he is. This is not only an area of the body, it is a symbol of courage, pride, and protection. Men often walk through the world with their chest forward, projecting strength, showing confidence, even when deep inside they may be carrying doubt or fear. To touch this part of a man is to touch the place where his identity lives. And it is here, more than anywhere else, that intimacy goes beyond the physical and becomes something far greater. Psychology reminds us that the heart is the emotional center. For men, this is the place they guard most fiercely. From childhood, many are taught to harden their emotions, to be strong in the face of pain, to hide their tears and never expose their wounds. So what happens? The chest becomes the armor. It is the shield that covers the heart. And because of this, most men rarely experience what it feels like for someone to reach past the armor and touch the soul beneath it. This is why the chest and heart area are so powerful. When a man allows you close enough to touch him here, it is not simply a physical act. It is a statement of trust. It is him saying, I will let you close to the part of me I protect the most. That closeness is rare, and once it is given, it must be treasured. Think about this. The heartbeat is the rhythm of life. It is steady, constant, always moving forward. But when you lay your hand on a man's chest, you are not just feeling his heartbeat, you are feeling his essence. You are reminding him that his life has value, that his strength is seen, that his heart is not only for fighting battles, but also for receiving love. That moment of contact says, without words, I am not afraid of your heart. I want to know it. I want to feel it. For many men, this is a craving that goes deeper than they ever reveal. They long for someone who doesn't just admire their strength, but also honors their softness. They crave someone who can see beyond the armor and recognize the human being inside, the one who sometimes gets tired, the one who sometimes feels afraid, the one who simply wants to be held without needing to explain why. Touching the chest and heart area is not only physical, it is psychological. It creates a space where walls crumble. It tells him he does not have to perform, he does not have to prove, he does not have to pretend. He can simply be. And in that stillness, intimacy flourishes. Here is the paradox. The world often applauds men for how much they can endure, how many battles they can fight, how much they can protect. But what men rarely admit is how much they long for someone who can protect their own heart. And this protection does not come from strength. It comes from gentleness. It comes from presence. It comes from the quiet assurance that says, you don't have to be a warrior here. You can just be you. The chest is also symbolic in another way. It is where pride rests. It is the place a man instinctively puffs up when he feels admired, when he feels respected, when he feels like he is enough. This means your presence, your touch, your affirmation have the power to fill this space with meaning. When you honor him here, you are not only reaching his body, you are affirming his identity. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine a man who gives his chest, his heart, his deepest place of vulnerability, only to be met with coldness, judgment, or indifference. That wound cuts deeper than any physical pain because it is not the body that is hurt, it is the soul. And when the soul is wounded, trust is lost. That is why this zone, once given, must never be taken for granted. The psychology of love shows us something profound. People do not fall in love with perfection. They fall in love with presence, with vulnerability, with authenticity. When you rest your hand over a man's chest, when you lean close enough to hear the beat of his heart, you are telling him, I accept you as you are. Not just the strong version of you, not just the successful version of you, but the real you. That message is worth more than anything else. So remember this truth. The chest and heart are not just physical zones of desire. They are gateways to a man's soul. When you touch him here with care, with sincerity, with respect, you awaken not only his passion, but also his devotion. You remind him that his heart is not something he has to guard at all times, that with you it is safe, that with you it is seen. And in that safety, something incredible happens. A man who feels safe in his heart loves without hesitation. He trusts without fear. He gives without restraint, because he has found what so many men search for but never find, a place where his heart is both desired and protected. If the chest and heart represent the inner world of a man, then the hands represent the outer world, the way he engages with life, the way he builds, the way he protects, the way he gives. Hands are not just instruments of action. They are extensions of a man's soul. They carry the history of his struggles, the story of his efforts, the marks of his sacrifices. And though men rarely admit it, their hands are one of the most overlooked yet deeply sensitive zones of craving. Look closely at a man's hands, and you will see more than skin and muscle. You will see the calluses that tell of hard work. You will see the strength that has lifted, carried, and built. You will see the evidence of his effort to provide, to protect, to shape a world for himself and for those he loves. His hands are the proof of his silent devotion. And when those hands are acknowledged, touched, and cared for, a man feels something. They're profound. He feels seen beyond his role, beyond his duties, beyond his performance. Psychology reminds us that touch is one of the most primal forms of communication. Holding hands, gentle strokes, or simply resting your fingers across his own releases oxytocin, the hormone of trust and bonding. But it goes deeper than chemistry. For a man, the hands symbolize more than function. They symbolize identity. They are the proof of his masculinity, his capacity, his ability to create. To have them tenderly acknowledged is to remind him that he is valued not only for what he does, but for who he is. Think of how many men live with the unspoken pressure to do more, to provide more, to achieve more, to fix more. Their hands become symbols of responsibility, often celebrated only when they are productive. Yet deep inside, a man craves for his hands to be touched not for what they produce, but for what they represent. A gentle hold, a reassuring squeeze, a simple intertwining of fingers tells him, your worth is not only in what you do, your worth is in who you are. This is why the hands are such a powerful zone of desire. Because when someone touches his hands, they are saying, I acknowledge your strength, I honor your effort, I value your presence. It is an act that transforms his perception of love. It turns affection into affirmation. It tells him that his giving is seen, but more importantly, that he himself is cherished. Now consider this, in moments of uncertainty, a man often clenches his fists, tightens his grip, carries his tension in his palms. It is as if his hands are holding onto the weight of his struggles. When you place your hand gently over his, when you relax his grip, when you soothe the tension, you are not just calming his body, you are telling him he doesn't have to hold everything alone. That silent message felt through touch is more powerful than any words could ever be. The hands are also a place where intimacy meets symbolism. Think of how lovers naturally reach for each other's hands in public. It is not just a gesture of closeness, it is a declaration of belonging. To hold a man's hand is to say, I choose you, I walk with you, I am with you. And though simple, this act awakens something deeply desired yet rarely expressed, the longing to be claimed, to be valued openly, to know that his presence matters. But here lies the hidden truth. Men almost never voice this craving. They may never say, hold my hand or touch me here. Pride, conditioning, and silence keep them from admitting how much it means. Yet, when they receive it, when their hands are given tenderness instead of demand, their heart opens in ways they cannot even explain. It is as though the very part of them that is always giving is finally allowed to receive. Psychology tells us that recognition is one of the deepest human needs. And for men whose hands symbolize their contribution, that recognition through touch can be life-changing. It heals, it affirms, it awakens passion. It says, you don't always have to build. You don't always have to hold everything together. Sometimes you can simply be held. So understand this, the hands are more than tools of action. They are symbols of love, sacrifice, and identity. When you touch them with intention, when you acknowledge them with gentleness, you are not just reaching his skin, you are reaching his story. You are reminding him that his value is not measured only by what he produces, but also by the love he gives and the person he is. And when a man feels this, when his hands are not just instruments of labor, but instruments of intimacy, he begins to love differently. He loves with openness. He loves with gratitude. He loves with the security of knowing he is more than what he does. He is valued for who he is. We have seen how men long for connection through the mind, the voice, the back, the heart, and even the hands. Yet, despite these deep desires, most men never speak of them. They remain quiet, almost hidden, locked away in silence. And the question rises, why? Why do men who crave so deeply, who long so intensely, stay silent about the very things that could bring them closer to love? The answer lies in years of conditioning. From the earliest days of boyhood, men are taught to wear masks. They are told to be strong, be tough, never show weakness. Tears are discouraged, vulnerability is often punished, and slowly, a boy learns that silence feels safer than honesty. By the time he becomes a man, this silence has hardened into a shield. He wants to speak, but the words never leave his lips, not because he doesn't feel them, but because he fears what might follow if he does. Psychology reveals a truth many overlook. Men fear rejection in the same way women fear abandonment. To admit their hidden desires, to express their vulnerabilities, feels like opening the door to judgment, criticism, or dismissal. And so they choose silence, not because their needs are small, but because the risk of exposure feels too great. This silence is not a lack of love. It is not a lack of passion. It is, in many ways, a defense mechanism. Men carry the belief that their desires may seem too much, too needy, or too vulnerable. They worry that by confessing them, they may appear less masculine, less capable, less strong, and so they hold back, burying their longings beneath the surface, or waiting for someone who can see beyond the words they never say. But here is where the paradox lies. The very silence meant to protect them is the silence that creates distance. It builds walls between hearts. It hides truths that, if spoken, could transform love. And this is why relationships often feel incomplete. Not because love is missing, but because words are missing. The silence, left unbroken, becomes heavier with time. Think about this. A man may sit quietly beside you, holding your hand, carrying the weight of his unspoken needs. Or he may long for reassurance, for a gentle word, for a touch that tells him he matters. But instead of asking, he waits, hoping you will see it without him having to say it. And when you do, when you notice without demand, when you give without being asked, he feels a kind of relief he cannot describe. Because in that moment you have heard the silence. The silence of men is not emptiness. It is full of longing, full of fear, full of unspoken love. And to understand this is to hold a rare kind of power. It allows you to connect not only with his words, but with his heart. It allows you to hear the language he cannot speak. Here is the truth. Men are not silent because they do not feel. They are silent because they feel too much. Their silence is not weakness. It is armor. And when you recognize that, you stop asking, why won't he talk? And you start asking, what is his silence trying to tell me? Psychology teaches us that trust is the doorway through which vulnerability walks. A man will not speak until he feels safe. He will not reveal until he feels understood. He will not let go until he knows he will not be judged. This is why patience, presence, and empathy matter more than questions. Because the silence of a man is not broken by pressure. It is broken by trust. And here lies the deeper motivation. When a man finally feels safe enough to break his silence, when he dares to open his heart, he gives something rare. He gives a truth that no one else has seen. He gives a part of himself he has hidden from the world. And that gift is not small, it is sacred. So remember this, the silence of men is not a wall meant to push you away. It is a shield built to protect a fragile truth. And when you have the courage to look beyond it, when you choose to listen to what is not said, you find a connection most people never reach. You find not just desire, you find devotion. Because the strongest love is not built by demanding words. It is built by hearing the silence. Understanding. This is where everything changes. To understand a man is to see beyond the silence, beyond the masks, beyond the surface. It is to step into his inner world, the world he rarely reveals, and to say with your presence, I see you, I hear you, I value you. When this kind of understanding exists, love transforms. It no longer rests on shallow ground. It builds on foundations that cannot be shaken. Think of how many men go through life unseen, performing, achieving, giving, yet rarely feeling truly known. They may be admired for their strength, respected for their success, even desired for their presence. But deep inside, they crave something far greater. They crave understanding, not just to be noticed, but to be comprehended. Not just to be acknowledged, but to be embraced in their entirety, both the strong and the fragile parts of who they are. Psychology teaches us that one of the greatest human needs is to be understood. When we feel understood, we feel safe. When we feel safe, we feel free. For men, who often carry unspoken fears and unexpressed longings, understanding is not just a comfort, it is liberation. It is the moment where they can lay down the armor and simply be. And this moment is rare because it requires more than attention. It requires presence. Presence is more than listening to words. It is hearing what is beneath them. It is observing the silence, noticing the tension, recognizing the unspoken. A man may never say, I feel unappreciated, but the heaviness in his shoulders tells the story. He may never whisper, I'm afraid of failing, but the long hours he works reveal the truth. To understand is to connect the dots that he himself struggles to voice. And when you do, he feels something most men live their whole lives longing for. He feels truly known. This is where intimacy deepens. Because love without understanding is shallow, it touches the surface but never reaches the core. But love with understanding goes further. It touches not only the body but also the mind, the soul, the essence of who a person is. And this is what men secretly crave but rarely express, the deep relief of being with someone who not only sees their actions, but also grasps their intentions, their struggles, and their unspoken truths. The power of understanding is also the power of healing. Every man carries wounds. Wounds from childhood, from failure, from rejection, from the constant demand to be more. These wounds often remain hidden because men are taught not to show them. But when someone understands without judgment, when someone listens without rushing, those wounds begin to heal. The silence begins to loosen. The mask begins to fall. And what emerges is not weakness, but strength. The kind of strength that grows when love is rooted in trust. Consider this. When a man feels misunderstood, he retreats, or he withdraws, he grows distant, he hides behind silence or distraction. But when he feels understood, he leans in, he opens up. He shares not just his victories, but his vulnerabilities. And that sharing creates a bond that no amount of surface-level affection could ever build, because at its core, intimacy is not about perfection. It is about connection. And connection is born from understanding. Motivation begins here. When you seek to understand, you become more than a companion. You become a mirror that reflects back his true self. You show him he is not alone in his struggles. You remind him that his silence is not a burden, but a bridge waiting to be crossed. And when that bridge is crossed, love moves from survival to thriving. This is the hidden wisdom. People do not fall in love with each other's perfection. They fall in love with the one who understands their imperfections yet chooses to stay. For men, this truth runs deep. Their silence, their strength, their unspoken desires, all of it longs for one thing: someone who understands without judgment. Someone who does not demand words but honors presence. Someone who sees not just the man on the outside but the soul on the inside. So, the power of understanding is not just about building stronger relationships. It is about unlocking a man's true self. It is about giving him the courage to be vulnerable, the freedom to express, and the security to love without fear. And when that happens, something remarkable occurs. Love stops being a performance and it becomes a partnership. Intimacy stops being a duty and it becomes a dance. Life stops being a battle and it becomes a journey walked side by side. Understand this: understanding is not passive, it is powerful. It is the language that breaks silence, the key that opens hearts, the force that transforms love. And when you choose to understand, when you decide to listen deeper, you create a love story not bound by fear, but strengthened by truth. Understanding is powerful, but what you choose to do with it is what truly defines the future of your relationships. Knowledge without action fades away, but knowledge turned into practice becomes transformation. And this is where your choice stands. Will you hear these truths only as words, or will you let them shape the way you love, the way you connect, and the way you see the men in your life? Every relationship is built in moments. Small, simple moments where love is either deepened or ignored. When you choose to listen to the silence, when you choose to understand, instead of judge, you are creating a moment that strengthens the bond. It doesn't take grand gestures, endless speeches, or perfection. It takes presence. It takes the decision to pause, to look deeper, to see not just what is visible, but also what is hidden. The truth is, most people wait for love to change them, instead of realizing that it is their actions that change love. When you give understanding, when you offer patience, when you honor the unspoken needs of someone else, you are not just building a relationship, you are building trust, resilience, and devotion. And in return, you will receive something most people only dream of: a connection that stands the test of time. Think about it. How many people in this world are searching endlessly for love, yet overlooking the simplicity of what love requires? They chase excitement, they crave perfection, they demand constant validation, and in the process, they miss the very core of what intimacy is. Love is not about demanding to be understood. Love is about giving understanding. Love is not about waiting to be seen. Love is about choosing to see. Psychology reveals that human beings thrive when they feel valued, respected, and safe. Safety is not built on promises. It is built on consistency. Respect is not built on words. It is built on action. Value is not built on appearance. It is built on presence. And when you live by these truths, you do not just inspire others, you transform them, because the way you love becomes the mirror through which they see themselves. Do not underestimate the ripple effect of one small shift in perspective. When you decide to approach relationships not with demands, but with understanding, not with pressure, but with patience, you break the cycle of silence that holds so many back. You create a space where men can express what they have hidden, where love can breathe without fear, where trust can grow without limit. And when that space is created, it doesn't just change one relationship, it changes lives. The men who stay silent today may not remain silent forever if they encounter someone willing to listen beyond words. The ones who carry hidden desires may finally express them if they feel safe enough to do so. And the walls that once seemed unbreakable may crumble in the presence of true empathy. This is the potential within your hands, the power to take understanding and turn it into transformation. But remember, it begins with you. It begins with your decision to stop waiting for change and start becoming the change. It begins with your courage to look past the obvious and honor the hidden. It begins with your willingness to give what others are too afraid to ask for. And when you step into this role, you do more than love. You lead. You show the way, not with control, but with compassion. The call to action is simple. Do not let this wisdom fade into the background of your mind. Carry it with you. Practice it. Live it. When you hold someone's silence with respect, when you meet their hidden needs with care, you are not only building a stronger bond, you are shaping the very quality of your life. Because the way we love defines the way we live. So choose today to love deeper. Choose to listen closer. Choose to understand beyond what is said. For in that choice lies the strength to heal wounds, to break barriers, and to create the kind of connection most people spend their lives searching for. This is your opportunity. This is your invitation. Do not wait for tomorrow. Begin now. Because the truth is this, men crave connection, they crave understanding, they crave love in places they often cannot name. And when you choose to be the one who sees, who listens, who understands, you will not just unlock their hidden world. You will unlock a love greater than you imagined. That is the reward for those who dare to love beyond words,